Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lois Glenn Carter. I am the founder of the Nationwide Black Family Mediation Services, welcoming you to the first of many Will Wednesdays. I am preparing this video for you because, as a family mediator, I have had the experience of encountering families who, at the point of death or sickness, has further driven the family far apart. And rarely do we find that at sickness or death, it actually brings a family together. And most oftentimes, this is because specific and very important paperwork is not in place to give directives, definitive answers for how a loved one is to be taken care of. So on today, we're going to talk about estate planning. We're going to give a definition. Estate planning is the process of arranging what happens to your assets in the event you pass or become unable to make decisions for yourself. If you were to pass with no will, or to get very sick without a healthcare proxy or living will or advanced medical directives, the state and or your physicians or even courts would determine what to do with you and or your assets. So that's not ideal. So if we could be preventive, if we can be proactive in our decision making as opposed to reactive, it would be a better situation for ourselves, our loved one, and our future. And so on today, you're going to take some notes. There will be a link in the description to contact me directly if you would like to have more information, specific information concerning you and your loved ones. So on today, we're going to talk about briefly a will, living will, power of attorney, and a trust. Those are some of the things that are included with estate planning. Keep in mind, this is not a procrastination project. This is something that you have to begin to chop away at it little bit by little bit for the furtherance of your well-being and your loved ones whom you care for. So you're going to begin. There are some things that I suggest to you. And then there are some things that you really would have to take into deep consideration and make sure you execute. So first and foremost, you want to begin to gather your very important documentation and include that documentation in a fire and water safe. Don't just put it in a new bag or a briefcase, but you want to make sure that your very important documentation is included in a fire and water safe, which you can find on any of the online services that ship things directly to you, or visit your local stores. So you want to first identify what is your marital status. Are you single, divorced, separated? That documentation, which entails any of those three. If you've been divorced, your divorce decree. If you're separated, the court document. If you're currently married, where is your marriage certificate? And that information. In addition to that, so your children, the names and date of birth for your birth children, your adopted children, your stepchildren. And then you would go also into your grandchildren, having the correct name, date of birth for your grandchildren. And you would also want to keep in mind or begin to tally the name and date of birth for your additional loved ones that you would like to include in your will. Okay, so for example, your niece or your nephew, and you want to include them in the distribution of your assets, then you would want to have their contact information just as much. And so, without further ado, because I represent the nationwide Black Family Mediation Services, these services are available across the United States. And so, in each state, it does vary as to who can help you to prepare some of the documentation that we're going to discover today. And so, in most states, we're going to go with what's carried out in most states, you would need to and should contact an attorney for the best advice concerning your specific information so that your will is not contested, that it is accepted by the probate court in your state and county, and that it is found fit, that it is a documentation that is not in question as to whether or not it is your final will and testament. And so you have the last will and testament, you have the living will, you have a power of attorney, whether it is personal or just doable power of attorney, and a trust. There are various trusts that go along with the will. One doesn't replace the other. So, for instance, if you are a gun owner, you may need to have a gun trust. If you have children, you may want to consider a child with special needs, setting up a trust, because there are certain things that the child is entitled to upon death, and then there are certain things that would prevent them from that entitlement if there is no trust in place. So being very specific and having this conversation in detail specifically in regards to your affairs is what you would want to do. As well as currently, as you're living now, you may want to have that power of attorney in place for someone to carry out financial transactions for you. But also, in some states specifically, the durable power of attorney would be necessary in the event that you become disabled or incapacitated, and that person is not just able to make financial decisions for you, but other very important decisions on your behalf. And this is someone that you would have selected before you got sick, before the next pandemic, before the next time that there is an altering life event. And so on today, those are just some of the quick things that I wanted to share with you. These documentations are so very important for the well-being of yourself as well as all of your loved ones. And so, as a family mediator, I'm often asked to come in to settle disputes between family members, sibling groups that were not prepared for their mom or their dad or their auntie becoming very ill, and or in a state in where they're not able to make decisions. And because one or two family members then decide to separate and exclude one or the other from the decision making, and we want mom on life support, or we want dad on to be resuscitated, and it's unclear as to what it is that the loved one wanted, it puts a tremendous strain on the relationship within the family. And oftentimes that is carried over for years. And then now sibling groups and cousin groups are no longer speaking to each other or having the relationship that was once held within the family. So you would see why these documentations with the directives from the person is so important for a family to have a peace of mind, to have clarity as to what it is that they desired, so that their loved ones can be at peace. And when making those decisions and understanding why mom or dad or someone had chose to be cremated as opposed to an elaborate homegoing service in which they would have never wanted, or they would have wanted, but a family member not participating in that religious practice was then the person of designation and chose otherwise. So these are just some of the things that I want to share with you on today. I hope that you find them helpful for you and your family. Please, again, click the link in the box below, and you can schedule a private consultation with me to go over all of the specific questions that you would then want to include when you speak with your attorney one-on-one, and the information that you need to gather and documentation. So thank you so very much for joining me